My name is Cassidy Monroe, and am 32 years old. The sterile smell of the hospital room mixed with the faint scent of my mom's lavender lotion as I held her hand. The machines had been beeping steadily for hours, but now they were slowing down. Mom's chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. I squeezed her fingers gently, whispering that I loved her, that it was okay to let go. Then her hand went limp in mine. The monitor flatlined, and in that exact moment, as the last breath left her body, my father leaned close to my ear and whispered 6 words that shattered what was left of my heart. Pack your things. You're leaving Monday. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you're here for real stories about family drama and unexpected justice, hit that like button and subscribe, so you never miss what happens next. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. Growing up in the Westlake Hills area of Austin, Texas, people thought I had it all. Our house was this sprawling estate with a circular driveway, manicured lawns, and a view of the hill country that real estate agents called breathtaking. My father, Lawrence Monroe, was a successful real estate developer who wore tailored suits and drove a Lexus. My mother, Helena Monroe, was the warmth that kept that cold mansion from feeling like a mausoleum. She painted watercolors in her studio, volunteered at the children's hospital, and had this way of making everyone around her feel seen. But underneath the surface, our family was rotting from the inside out. I remember being 8 years old, sitting in the front row of the elementary school auditorium in my velvet dress, waiting to play Claire de Lune at my first piano recital. I kept scanning the audience for Dad's face. Mom sat there beaming, but the seat next to her stayed empty. After I finished playing, hands shaking on the keys, Mom clapped the loudest. In the car ride home, she made excuses. Daddy had an important meeting, sweetheart. He wanted to be there so badly. Even then, I knew she was lying to protect me from the truth that he simply didn't care enough to show up. When I was 12, I woke up thirsty in the middle of the night and padded downstairs for water. I heard voices in Dad's study, sharp and angry. I pressed myself against the wall in the hallway, listening. I never wanted kids, Helena. Dad's voice cut through the silence like a knife. You know that. This wasn't part of my plan. Mom's response was so quiet I almost missed it. She's your daughter, Lawrence. Our daughter. His laugh was bitter. She's your daughter. I just pay the bills. I went back to bed without getting water. I never told Mom what I heard. By the time I was 15, Dad had perfected the art of the comparison. My cousin Sloane visited one Thanksgiving, and Dad wouldn't stop talking about her achievements. Now Sloane, she's going places, pre-law at Stanford, that's initiative. He looked at me across the turkey like I was a disappointment he had to tolerate. Never mind that I'd made the honor roll. Never mind that I'd won a regional writing competition. Nothing I did was ever enough. When I got accepted to the University of Texas at 18, Mom threw me a little celebration. She invited a few family friends, made my favorite lemon cake, and hung up a congratulations banner. Dad came home 2 hours late. He glanced at the banner, said UT, well, I suppose it's fine for some people, and went straight to his office. Mom's smile faltered, but she squeezed my shoulder and whispered, I'm proud of you, baby. So proud. What I didn't understand then, but pieced together later, was the source of all Dad's resentment. Mom came from old Texas oil money. Her father had been a wildcatter in the 1940s who struck it rich and built an empire. When Mom married Dad, she brought wealth and connections he could never have accessed on his own. But Dad was the kind of man who needed to believe he was self-made. The fact that Head married into money ate at him like acid. And I looked exactly like my grandfather, the man whose money had given Dad his start. Every time Dad looked at me, he saw a reminder that he wasn't as impressive as he wanted the world to believe. Mom kept her finances separate. I didn't know this at the time, but Shed maintained her own accounts, her own investments, her own properties. Dad ran his real estate business, but the foundation of our life, that house in Westlake Hills, that had been purchased with Mom's inheritance, he lived like a king in a castle he never actually owned. Throughout my childhood, Mom was my buffer. She stood between me and Dad's coldness. absorbing his cruelty so I wouldn't have to face the full force of it. Looking back now, I realized she was already protecting me in ways I couldn't see. She made sure I had relationships with her lawyer friend Georgina, who would later become crucial to my survival. She documented things quietly. She watched. She waited. She planned. But back then, I just thought I had a dad who didn't love me and a mom who loved me enough for both parents. I tried so hard to win his approval. I brought home perfect report cards. I stayed out of trouble. I excelled at everything I touched. And none of it mattered, because the problem was never me. The problem was him, and some people are just too broken to love anyone but themselves. 8 months before Mom died, she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor said the words in a sterile office that smelled like antiseptic and despair. Mom sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap. Dad checked his phone twice during the explanation of treatment options. I felt like the floor had opened up beneath me and I was falling into nothing. The prognosis was brutal. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year with aggressive treatment. The cancer had already spread. We could try chemo to buy time, but it would be painful and the outcome was inevitable. Mom looked at me across the doctor's desk and said, "I want whatever time I have left to be with my daughter." That's when I knew I was moving back home. I'd been living in a small apartment near downtown, working at a marketing firm, building my own life, but none of that mattered anymore. I gave my 2 weeks' notice, broke my lease, and moved back into my childhood bedroom. Dad's reaction when I arrived with my suitcases was to look up from his laptop and say, "How long is this arrangement supposed to last?" Like I was an inconvenient houseguest instead of his daughter moving home to care for his dying wife. The first attack came 2 weeks after the diagnosis. Dad had invited some of his business partners over for dinner. Mom was too exhausted to come downstairs, so I played hostess, serving the meal that our housekeeper Bonnie had prepared. Dad was holding court at the head of the table, talking about market trends, when one of the men asked how Helena was doing. Dad took a sip of his wine and said, "She's managing. We're all adjusting. Though I'll admit it's been convenient having Cassidy back home. Nice to have a live-in nurse we don't have to pay." He smiled like it was a joke. His colleagues laughed uncomfortably. I excused myself to the kitchen and cried into a dish towel. 2 months into Mom's treatment, the second attack happened. I came downstairs one evening and found Dad in Mom's dressing room, going through her jewelry boxes. Necklaces and bracelets were spread across the bed. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He didn't even look guilty. "Securing assets," he said matter-of-factly. "Making sure everything is accounted for." Something snapped inside me. "She's not dead yet, Lawrence." I never called him Dad anymore. He turned to face me, eyes cold. "Don't be naive, Cassidy. Someone has to be practical here." We had a screaming match right there, our voices carrying down the hallway. Mom heard everything from her bedroom. Later that night, I found her crying quietly into her pillow. The third attack came at month 5. Dad brought his assistant Kendall Reeves to what was supposed to be a family dinner. Kendall was 26, blonde, and wore a dress that was completely inappropriate for a Tuesday night meal with your boss' dying wife. The way they looked at each other made my skin crawl. They had inside jokes. They touched each other's arms when they laughed. Dad poured her wine like they were on a date. Mom sat at the table, a scarf wrapped around her head to hide her hair loss, and pretended not to notice. After they left, I went to Mom's room and found her staring out the window. "I know," she said before I could speak. "I've known for a while." By month 6, Dad started talking about selling the house. He'd bring it up casually over breakfast. "This place is too big for one person," he'd say, buttering his toast. "Once Helena is gone, I'll need something more manageable, like Mom was already dead. Like I didn't exist." When I confronted him about it, he looked at me like I was stupid. "What did you think was going to happen, Cassidy? You'd live here forever? This is my house. My decision." The fourth attack happened when I discovered He'd actually been showing the house to realtors. I came home from picking up Mom's prescriptions and found a strange woman with a clipboard taking photos of the living room. "Who are you?" I demanded. She looked confused. "I'm from Berkshire Hathaway." "Mr. Monroe scheduled a listing consultation." I found Dad in his office. Mom is upstairs dying and you're selling the house. He spun around in his chair. This doesn't concern you. This is between me and the realtors. I wanted to throw something at his head. The fifth and worst attack came at month 7. Mom was on hospice care by then. Her hospital bed set up in the master bedroom. I was sleeping in the guest room next door so I could hear if she needed anything during the night. One afternoon, I heard voices downstairs. Male voices, professional and calculating. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. Dad was giving a tour to a buyer. An actual buyer. While Mom was right upstairs, struggling to breathe. The master suite is currently occupied, Dad was saying, but as you can imagine, that situation will resolve itself shortly. I recorded the conversation on my phone, hands shaking with rage. During all of this, Mom was having mysterious meetings with Georgina, her lawyer. Georgina would come to the house with a briefcase, and they'd disappear into Mom's bedroom for hours. Papers were signed. Envelopes were sealed. When I asked Mom about it, she'd just squeeze my hand and say, "Trust me, baby. I'm taking care of things." I didn't understand what she meant. I was too exhausted from caregiving, too heartbroken watching her fade, too angry at Dad to piece together what was happening right in front of me. Our housekeeper Bonnie, who'd worked for our family for 20 years, started giving me these knowing looks. She'd wink at me when Dad wasn't looking. Once, she whispered, "Your mama is a smart woman, Miss Cassidy." Smarter than he ever gave her credit for. I had no idea what any of it meant. Meanwhile, Kendall was practically living at our house. She'd show up with takeout for Lawrence, ignoring me completely, acting like she already owned the place. Dr. Patricia Hughes, Mom's oncologist, witnessed some of Dad's behavior during home visits. I saw her jaw tighten when Dad complained about the cost of Mom's pain medication. "It's not like it's going to cure her," he said right in front of the doctor. Dr. Hughes looked at him with pure disgust. Mom was dying. Dad was planning his next chapter. And I was about to lose everything. Or so I thought. The last week of Mom's life felt like watching a slow-motion car crash that I was powerless to stop. Every day brought fresh horror, new evidence of just how thoroughly Dad had checked out of his marriage and his humanity. Monday, 5 days before Mom died, I was in the kitchen making her a smoothie when I heard Dad on the phone in his office. His door was cracked open, and his voice carried down the hall. "Just waiting for the inevitable at this point," he said, laughing at something the person on the other end said. "Then it's you, me, and Cabo for a week. I've already booked the resort." My hand froze on the blender. He was planning a vacation with Kendall for 1 week after his wife's funeral. I had to grip the counter to keep from screaming. Tuesday, 4 days before the end, Dad brought his lawyer Mitchell Barnes to the house. They didn't even try to be discreet. I heard them in the hallway outside Mom's room, voices low but not low enough. Mitchell was explaining something about community property versus separate assets. Dad's response: "She's too weak to have changed anything significant. I checked with the bank last month. Everything's where it should be." Mitchell's tone was cautious. "Lawrence, you need to be careful. If Helena inherited her assets before marriage, Texas law says those stay separate. She could have done anything with them," Dad scoffed. "She can barely sign her name at this point." "We're fine." What they didn't know was that Mom's eyes were open. She was listening to every word. When they finally left, and I went in to check on her, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something between sadness and satisfaction. Wednesday, 3 days out, Kendall showed up at dinner time with Thai food, just walked right in like she lived there. She set the bags on the kitchen counter and called out, "Lawrence, I brought that pad thai you like." She looked right through me like I was furniture. Bonnie was loading the dishwasher, and I saw her mouth tighten into a thin line. After Kendall bounced upstairs to Dad's office, Bonnie dried her hands and walked over to me. "Your mama knows," she whispered. "She's got it handled, Miss Cassidy. You just wait." I wanted to ask what she meant, but she just patted my arm and went back to work. Thursday was when things accelerated. Mom, who'd barely had the energy to speak for days, suddenly rallied. She asked me to help her sit up, and her voice was surprisingly firm when she said, "I need to see Georgina. Now. And I need privacy." I called Georgina, who dropped everything and arrived within 30 minutes. Dad tried to come into the room, but Mom actually raised her voice. "Get out, Lawrence!" It was the first time in months it heard her stand up to him. He stood there, stunned, then backed out of the room, face red with anger. Mom and Georgina met for 2 hours. I could hear papers rustling, low voices, and at one point, Mom's weak laughter. When Georgina finally emerged, she was carrying a leather folder thick with documents. She stopped next to me in the hallway. "Your mother is a remarkable woman," she said quietly. "Remember that." Dad spent that entire 2 hours pacing like a caged animal. He kept checking his watch, trying to listen at the door, calling Mitchell on his phone. I'd never seen him so agitated. Something was happening that he couldn't control, and it was eating him alive. That's also when I made my first discovery. I was collecting laundry from Dad's office and found a folder on his desk labeled Estate Planning. Inside were printouts from real estate websites showing houses in Arizona, condos in Florida, and a penthouse in downtown Austin, all with purchase prices in the 7-figure range. There were also printouts of travel itineraries. Cabo, like I'd overheard. But also Paris, Thailand, and New Zealand. He was planning his whole new life, down to the detail, while his wife was dying 50 feet away. The second discovery came when I was taking out the trash and found crumpled papers in Dad's office wastebasket. I pulled them out and smoothed them flat. They were notes from his meeting with Mitchell. In Dad's handwriting. "Give Cassidy 30 days to vacate. Sell house by end of quarter. Transfer Helena's accounts into estate. Minimize inheritance complications. Had been planning to throw me out before Mom was even gone. Had been planning it for weeks. Friday night, 24 hours before Mom's death, she had one of her last moments of clarity. I was sleeping in the chair next to her bed when she squeezed my hand at 3 in the morning. Her eyes opened, focused on my face with an intensity that startled me. "Promise me something," she whispered, her voice scratchy but determined. "When this is over, when Georgina gives you the letter, open it immediately. Don't wait. Don't second guess. Just open it and follow the instructions exactly." I was confused, still half asleep. "What letter, Mom?" She smiled, and for just a second, she looked like herself again. Young. Strong. Fierce. "Georgina has it. The day after I'm gone. Promise me, Cassidy." I promised, even though I didn't understand. She closed her eyes, satisfied, and whispered one more thing. "You were always enough, baby. Always. Hez the broken one. Not you." That was the most Shed spoken in days. The most energy Shed had in weeks. I should have known she was using her last reserves of strength to make sure her plan would work. But I was too tired, too sad, too focused on the fact that I was losing her to piece it all together. Dad didn't come to say goodnight to her. He was on the phone in his office until late, talking to Kendall. I could hear him laughing about something. His wife was dying, and he was laughing. I stayed in that chair all night, holding Mom's hand, watching her breathe, and trying to memorize everything about her before she was gone. I had no idea that Shed spent the last 8 months orchestrating the most epic takedown of my father that anyone could imagine. I had no idea that losing her would be the beginning of getting everything I'd never dared to hope for. I just knew that Saturday morning was coming, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same again. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of Texas winter morning where the sky looks like brushed metal. I woke up with a crick in my neck from sleeping in the chair, my hand still holding Mom's. Her breathing had changed sometime during the night. It was slower, shallower, with long pauses that made my heart stop until the next breath came. I knew what this meant. Hospice nurse Ruby had explained the signs. This was the end. I texted Dad at 6 in the morning, "Come now." "It's time." He didn't respond. I texted again at 7, nothing. I called at 8. Voicemail. By 8:30, I was standing in the hallway outside his bedroom door, pounding on it. "Lawrence! Your wife is dying." He finally opened it at 9, hair wet from a shower, smelling like expensive cologne. "I heard you the first time, Cassidy. I'm coming." He took his time getting dressed, checked his phone, made himself coffee. It was 9:30 by the time he finally walked into Mom's room. Kendall was waiting in her car in the driveway. I'd seen her when I looked out the window. She was doing her makeup in the rearview mirror. Mom's eyes were closed, but I knew she was still there. Her chest rose and fell with those terrible, rattling breaths. I sat on one side of the bed, holding her left hand. Dad stood on the other side, hands in his pockets, looking anywhere but at her face. Ruby checked Mom's vital signs and then quietly stepped back, giving us space. This was family time. This was goodbye. Mom, I whispered, leaning close to her ear. I'm here. I love you so much. Thank you for everything. For being my mom. For loving me. For protecting me. My voice broke. Tears were streaming down my face, dripping onto her blanket. It's okay to go. You don't have to fight anymore. I promise, it'll be okay. Mom's eyes fluttered open. She looked at me with such overwhelming love that I felt it like a physical force. Then her gaze shifted to Dad. And the look she gave him was different. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even hurt anymore. It was pity. Like she was looking at someone so pathetically small that he didn't even deserve her anger. Her lips moved, forming one word with her last bit of strength. Cassidy. Not his name. Mine. Then her hand went limp in mine. The rattle stopped. The room went quiet, except for my sobbing. Mom died at 9:47 a.m. Dad checked his watch. That's what he did in the moment his wife of 34 years took her last breath. He checked his watch. Ruby moved forward to confirm what we already knew, gently closing Mom's eyes and pulling the sheet up. She put her hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, honey. Take all the time you need. She left the room to make the necessary calls. I was still holding Mom's hand, crying so hard I could barely breathe, when Dad grabbed my elbow and pulled me into the hallway. I jerked away from him. What are you doing? My voice was thick with tears and fury. He looked at me with those cold eyes, not a tear in them, and said the words I'd been half expecting but still couldn't believe. You have until Monday to pack your things and get out. I stared at him. What? Mom just died. She just died, Lawrence. He crossed his arms. This house was never meant for you. Your mother's gone. The arrangements have been made. You need to leave. I couldn't speak, couldn't process. My mother's body was still warm in the room behind us, and he was kicking me out. Before I could form words, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Kendall walked in. Actually walked into the house, into the moment, like she had every right to be there. She put her arm around Dad's waist. Baby, should we start making those calls? She asked, her voice syrupy sweet. Baby. She called him baby, while his wife's body was cooling in the next room. They started discussing paint colors, renovation ideas. Kendall wanted to knock out a wall in the kitchen. Shed always thought this house had so much potential. Dad nodded along, discussing contractors and timelines. I stood there in shock, watching them plan their future in Mom's house, over Mom's body, like I didn't exist, like Shed never existed. Something in me snapped into survival mode. I pulled out my phone and walked away from them, down the stairs, out onto the front porch. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial. Georgina answered on the first ring. Cassidy. Her voice was gentle but also urgent. I've been waiting for your call. I'm so sorry about Helena. She was one of my dearest friends. I couldn't speak for a moment. Hez kicking me out. I finally managed. Right now, while she's still up there. Georgina's tone changed, became sharp and focused. Listen to me carefully. Come to my office tomorrow. Sunday. 10 a.m. Do not argue with him. Do not engage. Just leave. Do you understand? I didn't understand anything. Why? I asked. Trust me. Trust your mother. She prepared for this. Every bit of this. 10 a.m. tomorrow. I'll explain everything. I hung up and went back inside. Bonnie was in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. Shed loved Mom too. When she saw me, she pulled me into a hug. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Your mama was an angel. Then she pulled back and looked at me intently. Did Georgina tell you to come see her? I nodded. Bonnie smiled through her tears. Good. Miss Helena was a smart woman. So smart. She pressed something into my hand. An envelope. Your mama gave me this last week. Said if he kicked you out before the funeral, I should give you this. I opened it. Inside was a key and a slip of paper with an address. A bank. A safety deposit box number. Nothing else. That night, I checked into an extended stay hotel near the highway. The room smelled like carpet cleaner and old cigarettes. I sat on the polyester bedspread and let myself fall apart. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Cried for Mom. Cried for the father I'd never had. Cried for 32 years of trying to be good enough for someone who was never going to love me. My phone kept buzzing. Aunt Laurel, Dad's sister, calling. I didn't answer. Random numbers that might have been family friends. I ignored them all. I couldn't talk to anyone. Couldn't explain. Couldn't function. Around midnight, I finally looked at the key Bonnie had given me. It was small, brass, with a number stamped on it. What had Mom put in a safety deposit box? When had she even had the strength to go to a bank? None of it made sense. But Georgina's words kept echoing in my head. She prepared for this. Every bit of this. What had Mom known? What had she done? I fell asleep with my clothes on, the key clutched in my hand, and woke up every hour from dreams where Mom was trying to tell me something I couldn't quite hear. Sunday morning couldn't come fast enough. Sunday morning I drove to Georgina's office building in downtown Austin with my stomach in knots. I hadn't eaten since Friday. Hadn't slept more than a few hours. I probably looked like a disaster in my jeans and wrinkled sweater, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, eyes swollen from crying. Georgina's office was on the 14th floor of a sleek glass building near the Capitol. The elevator ride up felt like it took forever. She was waiting for me in the reception area. Georgina was in her early 60s, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and the kind of elegant style that came from old money and good taste. She wore simple black slacks and a cream blouse, pearls at her neck. When she saw me, her professional demeanor cracked, and she pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Helena was one of the best people I've ever known." I held on to her like a lifeline. "I don't understand what's happening," I whispered. She pulled back and looked me in the eyes. "You will. Come, sit down. We have a lot to discuss." Her office was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Bookshelves lined with leather-bound legal volumes. A massive oak desk that looked like it had been in her family for generations. She gestured to a comfortable leather chair and sat across from me. On the desk between us was a cream-colored envelope with my name written in Mom's handwriting. Seeing it made my throat close up. "Your mother gave this to me 3 weeks ago," Georgina said softly. "She made me promise to give it to you, the day after she passed. She knew exactly what Lawrence would do. She knew he'd throw you out immediately. She prepared for all of it. Cassidy. Every single detail." My hands were shaking as I took the envelope. It was thick, several pages folded inside. I opened it carefully and pulled out the letter. Mom's handwriting, slightly shaky but still recognizable, filled page after page. I started reading, and within seconds, the tears were back. "My dearest Cassidy," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and your father has shown his true colors. I'm so sorry I can't be there to see your face when you realize what I've done. I'm sorry I didn't do it sooner. But baby, I need you to understand something first. None of this is your fault. None of his cruelty, his coldness, his absolute failure as a father has anything to do with you. You were always the best thing I ever did. The only purely good thing in my life, and I'm about to make sure he can never hurt you again." I had to stop reading and wipe my eyes. Georgina pushed a box of tissues across the desk. "Take your time," she said gently. I kept reading. I found out about Kendall the same week I got my diagnosis. Isn't that something? The universe decided to take everything from me at once. I hired a private investigator and confirmed they'd been having an affair for 6 months. 6 months while I was planning our anniversary dinner. 6 months while I was volunteering at the hospital. 6 months while I was being a good wife to a man who didn't deserve me. When the cancer diagnosis came, I made a decision. I wasn't going to waste my last months confronting him or filing for divorce and dealing with lawyers and drama. I was going to spend my time with you. And I was going to make absolutely certain that when I was gone, you would be protected, so I started planning. My heart was pounding. I looked up at Georgina. What did she do? Georgina smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who was about to destroy someone. Keep reading. Then talk details. Mom's letter continued. The house in Westlake Hills was purchased entirely with my inheritance from my parents. My father's oil money? Your father didn't put a single dollar toward that house. In Texas, that makes it my separate property. It was always in my name alone. Lawrence has been living in my house for 34 years, thinking it was his. It never was. And now, Cassidy, it's yours. Completely yours. The deed is already changed. Georgina has all the paperwork. He has 30 days to get out. Not you. Him. I stopped breathing. Read it again. The house was mine? Not Dad's? Mine? But that's not all, baby. My parents left me more than your father ever knew. I kept most of my inheritance separate, invested it wisely, and never told him the full extent of it. Why would I? He was already insecure about marrying into money. If he'd known how much I actually had, it would have destroyed his ego completely. So I let him think he was the provider. Let him think he was supporting us. Let him believe his own mythology. Meanwhile, I was building something for you. Security, freedom, a future where his opinion of you doesn't matter because you'll never need anything from him. Georgina leaned forward. Your mother was extraordinarily intelligent about money. She had investment accounts your father never knew existed. Real estate in her name only. Trust funds she set up years ago. And she updated everything the week after her diagnosis. She knew she was dying. She knew he'd betray you. So she made sure you'd be protected. I looked back at the letter with shaking hands. Mom had written out a list, an actual list of assets. The house in Westlake Hills, appraised value $4,700,000. Investment portfolio with Morgan Stanley, $18 million. Trust fund established in my name when I was born that I'd never been told about, $6 million. 3 rental properties in Houston and San Antonio, combined value $3,200,000. Mineral rights to land in West Texas that produced royalty checks, approximately $1 million in current value. I had to read it 3 times before the numbers became real. This can't be right, I whispered. Georgina pulled out another folder. It's all here. Statements, deeds, titles. Your mother documented everything meticulously. The total comes to approximately $33 million. And it's all yours, Cassidy. Every single penny. Your father has no legal claim to any of it. The room was spinning. $33 million. I'd been crying in an extended stay hotel, terrified about where I'd live, how I'd survive, and the whole time Mom had left me $33 million. But what about Dad? I asked, my voice barely audible. What does he get? Georgina's smile got wider. In Texas, separate property stays separate. Your mother inherited this wealth before marriage and kept it separate throughout. She doesn't owe him a thing. She did, however, file for divorce 2 weeks before she died. Those papers are being served to him tomorrow morning, posthumously. In the filing, she documented his affair, his plans to sell the house, his treatment of you. She made sure that even in death, the truth about Lawrence Monroe is on public record. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It was either laugh or completely lose my mind. Mom had done this. Mom, who I thought was too weak to fight back, who I thought had just accepted Dad's betrayal, had actually been planning the most epic takedown I could imagine. She'd let him think he was winning. Let him plan his new life with Kendall. Let him count his chickens. And then she'd pulled the rug out from under him so completely that he was going to lose everything. There's more, Georgina said. She pulled out another document. Your mother had a life insurance policy, $2 million. Your father took it out the week after her diagnosis, listing himself as beneficiary. He literally insured your mother's life, like she was an investment. She found out about it and changed the beneficiary to you 3 months ago. That money is also yours. I put my head in my hands. Dad had bet on Mom's death. Actually put money on when she'd die. And Mom had known about it and said nothing. Just quietly changed the paperwork and let him keep thinking he'd cash in on her death. She played him, I said, looking up at Georgina. She played him perfectly. Georgina nodded. Helena was a chess player, and your father was playing checkers. He never stood a chance. The letter had one more page. Cassidy, I need you to promise me something. Use this money wisely. Don't let it change who you are. You're kind, compassionate, creative, and strong. Stay that way. Use this security to build a life that makes you happy. Travel, create, love, do all the things I won't get to see you do. And baby, don't waste one more second trying to win your father's approval. You don't need it. You never did. You were always enough, always. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. I love you more than every star in the Texas sky. Go live, sweetheart. Live big, and live free. That's all I ever wanted for you. All my love, forever and always, Mom. I was sobbing again. But this time it was different. It was grief mixed with gratitude mixed with overwhelming love for a mother who'd protected me even in death. Georgina let me cry. She handed me tissues and waited patiently until I could speak again. What happens now? I finally asked. She consulted her notes. Tomorrow morning, a sheriff's deputy will serve your father with eviction papers and the posthumous divorce filing. He has 30 days to vacate the property. I've also prepared documentation proving your ownership of all assets. If he contests anything, and he probably will, we have everything we need to destroy him in court. Your mother documented his affair extensively. There are recordings, photographs, text messages. She hired an investigator and got it all. She knew, I said, more to myself than to Georgina. She knew he'd throw me out the second she died. She planned for it. Georgina's expression softened. She knew exactly who Lawrence was. I think she'd known for a long time. She just needed the strength to do something about it. The cancer, awful as it was, gave her clarity, and it gave her the motivation to protect you. She spent her last months making sure you'd be okay. I looked out the window at downtown Austin, the city glittering in the late morning sun. Everything had changed in the span of an hour. I'd gone from homeless and terrified to wealthy beyond my imagination. But the money wasn't the point. The point was that Mom had seen me, loved me, believed I deserved to be protected and supported. She'd given me the one thing Dad never had. Proof that I mattered. That I was worth fighting for. Worth planning for. Worth saving. When should I go back to the house? I asked. Georgina thought about it. Let the sheriff serve him first. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Give him a few hours to process and panic. Then you show up. Walk into your house. Your house, Cassidy. Not his. Let him see what he's lost. Not just the money or the house. Let him see that he lost you, and that was his biggest mistake of all. I left Georgina's office with copies of all the documents, proof of ownership of everything Mom had left me, and a plan. Tomorrow morning, Dad's world was going to implode, and I was going to be there to watch it happen. As I drove back to the hotel, I thought about Mom in her hospital bed. Too weak to walk, barely able to speak, but sharp as ever. Planning, plotting, protecting, making sure that the last laugh was ours. I whispered to the empty car, "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for everything." And I swear I felt her with me, smiling. Monday morning at 8:45, I parked across the street from the house where I grew up. Georgina was in the car with me. We had a clear view of the front door. The sheriff's deputy, a man named Clark who looked to be in his 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, pulled up at exactly 9 a.m. in his marked vehicle. I watched him walk up the front path, papers in hand, and ring the doorbell. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Dad answered the door in his bathrobe. His hair was messy, and behind him I could see Kendall on the stairs wearing one of his shirts and nothing else. They'd spent the night in Mom's house, probably in Mom's bed. Less than 48 hours after she died. The rage that went through me in that moment was white-hot and clarifying. Deputy Clark introduced himself and handed Dad the papers. I watched Dad's face go through a series of expressions. Confusion first, his brow furrowing as he scanned the first page. Then anger, his face flushing red as he read further. Then something that looked like fear as the reality started sinking in. His mouth was moving, and even from across the street I could tell he was yelling. Deputy Clark remained calm, pointing to sections of the document, explaining things that Dad clearly didn't want to hear. Dad grabbed his phone from the pocket of his robe and started dialing, still arguing with the deputy. He was calling Mitchell Barnes, his lawyer. I watched him pace in the doorway, the phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing wildly. Kendall had disappeared back upstairs. Smart girl. She was realizing this wasn't her fight. Then Dad looked up, and he saw me. Georgina's black Mercedes was distinctive enough, and I wasn't hiding. His eyes locked on mine across the street. His face went from red to purple. He started shouting something and pointing at me. Deputy Clark tried to redirect his attention. But Dad was storming down the driveway now. Papers clutched in his fist, bathrobe flapping open to reveal his pajamas. Georgina put a hand on my arm. "Stay in the car," she said. I shook my head. "No. I need to do this." I got out of the car just as Dad reached the street. "You!" he screamed, jabbing his finger at me. "You did this! You manipulated her while she was dying. You poisoned her against me." I stood my ground, Georgina beside me. "No, Lawrence. Mom protected me from you. There's a difference." He waved the papers in my face. "This is fraud. She wasn't in her right mind. No court will uphold this." Georgina stepped forward, her lawyer voice cold and precise. "Mr. Monroe, your wife was evaluated by 3 separate physicians in the weeks before her death. All confirmed she was of sound mind and fully competent to make legal decisions. Any contest you file will fail, and it will cost you money you no longer have. I'd suggest you start packing." Dad's eyes were wild. He looked like an animal backed into a corner. "I built this family's reputation. I made us somebody in this city. You think you can just take everything I worked for?" I laughed. "I couldn't help it. You didn't work for anything. You lived off Mom's money for 34 years. You drove her car. You lived in her house. You used her connections. You built nothing, Lawrence. You were a parasite." His hand shot out like he was going to grab me, but Deputy Clark was there suddenly, stepping between us. "Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down. Do not touch anyone. Do you understand?" Dad backed up, breathing hard. Neighbors were coming out now. Mrs. Chen from next door was on her porch with her phone out, recording everything. The Hoffmans were in their driveway, watching with undisguised interest. Kent, the gardener who worked for 3 houses on our street, had stopped his mower and was grinning. She was sick. Dad tried again, his voice cracking now. She was confused. The medication made her crazy. I pulled out my phone and opened a video file. Want to see how confused she was? I pressed play. It was one of the videos Mom had made with Georgina. Mom sitting up in bed, looking directly at the camera, speaking slowly but clearly. "My name is Helena Marie Monroe. Today is October 8th, 2024. I am of sound mind. I know exactly what I'm doing. I am leaving everything I own to my daughter, Cassidy Monroe. My husband, Lawrence Monroe, deserves nothing. He has betrayed our marriage, planned to throw our daughter out of her home, and shown no love or compassion during my illness. This is my choice. Made freely and with full understanding." I turned the phone so Dad could see Mom's face. She made 6 of these videos. All notarized. All legally binding. Want to see the rest? Dad's face crumpled. For just a second, he looked like he might cry. But it wasn't grief for Mom, it was grief for himself, for his lifestyle, for the image head carefully constructed that was now burning to ash. "You'll never be able to manage this," he said, his voice desperate now. "You're irresponsible. You don't work. You don't understand money." I stepped closer to him. "I quit my job to take care of Mom. You know, the woman who was dying upstairs while you were showing realtors through her house. And I understand money just fine. I understand that you never actually had any, it was always hers. Now it's mine." He tried one more attack. The cruelest one he could think of. His voice dropped, became venomous. "She never even wanted you. I heard her crying when she found out she was pregnant. She was devastated. He thought this would break me. I saw it in his eyes. He was trying to destroy my last good memories of Mom. But Mom had prepared me for this too. I smiled. Nice try. Mom wrote me a 20-page letter, every memory, every sacrifice. Every time she chose me over you. Every moment she was proud of me. She documented 32 years of loving me more than anything in the world. Your lies don't work anymore. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. He had nothing left. No money, no house, no leverage, no power. Kendall appeared in the doorway then, now dressed in jeans and a sweater, carrying her purse. She'd clearly been listening to everything. Lawrence, she called out, her voice uncertain. I think I should go. She walked down the driveway toward her car. Dad turned to her. Kendall. Wait. We can figure this out. She shook her head. I can't do this. This is too much. She got in her BMW and drove away without looking back. Just like that. When the money disappeared, so did she. Dad actually got on his knees in the driveway, right there in front of the neighbors, in front of Deputy Clark, in front of me. Cassidy, please. I'm your father. We can work something out. You can't just throw me out on the street. I looked down at him and felt absolutely nothing. No pity. No satisfaction. Just cold, empty, nothing. You were never my father. You were the man who resented me for existing. And I'm not throwing you out on the street. I'm giving you 30 days. That's 29 more days than you were going to give me. Georgina handed Dad a second set of papers. Mr. Monroe, these are the divorce papers your wife filed 2 weeks before her death. She documented your affair in detail. She also documented your plans to sell her house without her knowledge or consent. If you choose to contest any of this, all of it becomes public record. Your business associates will see it. Your country club will see it. Everyone who thought you were a respectable man will know the truth. I suggest you take the 30 days, pack your things, and leave quietly. I walked past him, up the driveway, and stopped at the front door. I turned back and said loud enough for everyone to hear, You have 30 days. Pack what's actually yours. If Mom bought it, it stays. You'll need a small truck. Then I walked into my house and changed the security code behind me. I heard him yelling in the driveway. Heard Mrs. Chen still recording. Heard car doors slamming as more neighbors came out to watch. Lawrence Monroe's carefully constructed image was destroyed in less than 30 minutes, and I felt lighter than I had in years. The first thing I did after locking the door behind me was stand in the foyer and just breathe. The house felt different already, cleaner somehow, like a weight had been lifted from the walls themselves. Bonnie came around the corner from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, tears streaming down her face. Welcome home, Miss Cassidy, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Welcome home. She hugged me tight, and we both cried. Miss Helena would be so proud, she whispered. So proud of you. The first week was chaos. Dad tried everything. On Monday afternoon, his sister, my Aunt Laurel, called me. She started in immediately. Cassidy, I don't know what you think you're doing, but family doesn't treat family like this. Your father is devastated. He just lost his wife. I cut her off. Aunt Laurel, did you know Dad was having an affair? Did you know he was planning to sell the house the day after Mom died? Did you know he took out life insurance on her the week she was diagnosed with cancer? Silence. Long, heavy silence. What? She finally said, her voice small. I explained everything. The affair. The eviction threat. The way Head treated Mom during her illness. When I finished, Aunt Laurel was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Lawrence always was entitled. Even as a kid, he thought the world owed him something. I'm sorry, honey. I had no idea it was this bad. You did the right thing. On Tuesday, Dad posted on Facebook. In my deepest grief, I've been betrayed by my own daughter. Sometimes the people you love most are the ones who hurt you worst. The post was up for maybe 3 hours before the comments started rolling in. Mom's book club friends came out swinging. We all knew about Kendall, Lawrence. Stop playing victim. One of Mom's charity board members wrote, Helena told me you tried to sell her house while she was dying. Shame on you. Someone else posted, Saw you at dinner with that young blonde months ago. We knew what was happening. The post got so brutal that Dad deleted his entire Facebook account by evening. On Wednesday, Mitchell Barnes called Georgina, trying to threaten a lawsuit. I was in Georgina's office when she took the call on speakerphone. Mr. Barnes, let me be very clear. If you file any contest to Helena Monroe's estate, we will bury your client. We have photographs of him with his mistress. We have recordings of him discussing selling his dying wife's house. We have text messages, phone records, and witness statements. We have video of Helena, filmed weeks before her death, explicitly stating her wishes. Discovery in this case would be fascinating. Are you sure you want everything your client did to become public record? There was a long pause. Then Mitchell said quietly, "I'll advise my client to accept the terms." And that was the end of that. During that first week, I started going through Mom's things. Her home office was a revelation. Dad had never been allowed in there. Said it was full of boring art catalogs and charity committee notes. It was actually full of meticulously organized documentation, boxes of files, years of bank statements showing how Shed carefully separated her finances from Dad's, copies of the prenup they'd signed before marriage that Dad had apparently forgotten about, which stated that all premarital assets remained separate property. Mom had been protecting herself from the beginning. Shed known who he was, even back then. I found letters Shed written to me over the years but never sent. Letters from when I was a baby. Cassidy is 6 months old today. She smiled at me this morning and my heart exploded with love. I hope she never doubts how wanted she is. Letters from my childhood. Cassidy made the honor roll again. Lawrence didn't even look up from his phone when I told him. But I see her. I see how brilliant she is. Letters from my teenage years. Cassidy asked me today if Dad loves her. I lied and said yes. I should have told her the truth. That some people aren't capable of love. But she's too young to carry that weight. There were photo albums hidden in the back of her closet. Just pictures of me and Mom. The two of us at the zoo. At the park. Making cookies in the kitchen. Shed documented our entire relationship separately from the family photos downstairs where Dad lurked in the background of every shot looking irritated. These albums were our real life, just us. Just love. Mom's journal from the last year destroyed me. I sat on the floor of her office reading entry after entry. Saw Lawrence deleting texts today. He thinks I'm too weak to notice. Called Duncan, the IT specialist Georgina recommended. He recovered everything. Kendall Reeves, 26 years old. Of course it's someone young, someone who doesn't see through him yet. Lawrence showed the house to realtors today. Our house. My house. The house my father's money bought. He actually walked them through while I was upstairs. I could hear them discussing square footage and market value. He forgets I'm dying. Not dead yet. Cassidy quit her job to care for me. She bathes me, feeds me, reads to me, sits with me through the pain. Lawrence complained to his golf buddy that I'm enabling her laziness. She is the only thing I did right. The only thing. Met with Georgina today. Everything is arranged. When Lawrence throws Cassidy out, and he absolutely will, the moment I'm gone, she'll discover she holds all the cards. I wish I could see his face. I really do. Reading Mom's words, seeing how clearly Shed understood everything, how carefully Shed planned, how much Shed loved me, I felt grief and gratitude in equal measure. Shed seen me, really seen me, and Shed made sure the world would see me too. Dad's second-week meltdown came on a Thursday night. I heard pounding on the front door at 10 p.m. I looked at the security camera and saw Dad, clearly drunk, weaving on the front porch. "Let me in," he screamed. "This is my house. You can't keep me out." I didn't open the door. I called 911. Deputy Clark showed up again. Must have been his territory. "Mr. Monroe, we've been through this. You have 18 more days to arrange your move. You cannot show up here intoxicated and make demands." Dad took a swing at the deputy, missed completely, and fell into the rose bushes. He was arrested for public intoxication and assaulting an officer. Made the local news. The headline was, "Local real estate developer arrested at his former home. His professional reputation was in ashes." The community response was swift and brutal. Mom's book club sisters, women I'd known my whole life, showed up with casseroles and hugs. "We all knew your father was a piece of work, Mrs. Patel said, pressing a dish of biryani into my hands. "We're just glad Helena made sure you were protected." Mom's charity board held an emergency meeting and removed Dad from all donor recognition. His name, which had been on a plaque at the children's hospital, was taken down. The Austin Country Club quietly suggested he resign his membership. His business partners suddenly stopped returning his calls. In 2 weeks, Lawrence Monroe went from respectable businessman to social pariah. I spent hours in Mom's studio, the room where Shed painted her watercolors and dreamed her dreams. Her easel was still set up with an unfinished painting, a sunset over the hill country, oranges and purples bleeding into each other. I decided to leave it exactly as it was. A memorial to the woman who'd saved me, the woman who'd been strong enough to protect me even when she barely had the strength to breathe. My emotions were a complicated mess. There was satisfaction in watching Dad's downfall. I won't lie about that. But there was also grief. Grief for the father I'd wished I had. Grief for the childhood I deserved but didn't get. Grief for Mom, who'd spent 34 years married to a man who didn't deserve her. And complicated, messy feelings about suddenly having more money than I could comprehend. The money meant security, yes. But it also meant responsibility. What was I supposed to do with $33 million? Who was I supposed to become? On day 17, I found Mom's instructions for me, tucked into a book on her nightstand. Wild by Cheryl Strayed. A folded piece of paper with her handwriting. "Cassidy, if you're reading this, you have the money and the house and your freedom. Here's what I want you to do with it. Live. Really live. Travel to places that scare you. Create things that matter. Love people who deserve it. Build something beautiful with your one wild and precious life. Don't hoard it. Don't waste it. Use it to become exactly who you're meant to be. And baby, remember that you were always enough. The money doesn't make you valuable. You were born valuable. The money just means you never have to prove it to anyone ever again. I love you forever, Mom." I cried reading it. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my wallet where I could carry it with me. A reminder of who I was and who I wanted to become. Not Lawrence Monroe's disappointing daughter. Not even Helena Monroe's protected child. Just Cassidy. Finally, just Cassidy. Free to figure out what that meant. Day 28 arrived faster than I expected. Dad had been silent for the past 10 days. No more drunken appearances or angry phone calls. It almost started to relax. Then I looked out the window and saw a moving truck backing into the driveway. It was 7 in the morning, and Dad was apparently starting early. I made myself coffee and watched from the kitchen window as Dad got out of his Lexus looking like head aged 10 years. His face was haggard, his clothes rumpled, his whole demeanor defeated. But I knew better than to think he was done fighting. Men like Lawrence Monroe never go down without one last ugly scene. He rang the doorbell. I took my time answering. When I opened it, he looked at me with red-rimmed eyes and said, "I need to get my things." I stepped aside. "You have until 6 p.m. Everything Mom bought stays." He walked in past me, and I caught a whiff of stale cigarettes and cheap hotel soap. Had been staying at the Ramada Inn on the interstate. The irony wasn't lost on me. From a $4 million house to a Ramada Inn in less than a month. The movers started bringing in boxes. Dad directed them to his office first. I followed, watching carefully. He kept trying to take things that weren't his. "This lamp was a gift to me," he said, wrapping it in bubble wrap. I checked the card I'd found in Mom's files. From Patricia and Tom Richardson. For Helena. Birthday 2018. It stays. His jaw clenched. The desk then. I shook my head. Mom's great-grandmother's desk. Has her initials carved in the bottom drawer. Want me to show you? He moved to the bookshelf. It already marked everything with sticky notes based on Mom's meticulous records. Green stickers for his things, red for hers. There were about 12 books with green stickers. He stared at the shelf in disbelief. This went on for hours. Every item was a negotiation. Every box was inspected. He kept trying to sneak things past me. A silver picture frame. That's sterling. From Mom's mother. A leather chair. Mom bought that from Restoration Hardware in 2015. Receipts in her files. A painting from the hallway. Original watercolor by Mom's college roommate. Given to her at graduation. By noon, Dad's collection of belongings fit into maybe 8 boxes. 34 years of marriage and he had 8 boxes to show for it. Because everything else had been Mom's. Had just been living in her life. That's when I found the documents in his office. Head left a drawer unlocked, and while he was arguing with the movers about a bookcase, I looked inside. Life insurance papers, policy on Mom for $2 million. Beneficiary, Lawrence Monroe. Date purchased, 1 week after her diagnosis. I felt like it'd been punched in the stomach all over again. I'd known about this from Georgina, but seeing it in his handwriting, seeing the calculation behind it, made it real in a different way. Head literally put a dollar amount on Mom's death and planned to collect. I walked into the living room where he was packing files. You insured Mom's life 1 week after she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I held up the papers. His face went pale. That's standard financial planning, Cassidy. You're too young to understand. I laughed harshly. You bet on her death, like she was a racehorse. He stood up, defensive. Someone had to be practical. She wasn't thinking clearly. Someone had to protect our assets. I stepped closer. They weren't your assets. They were never your assets. You've been living off her money your entire adult life. He tried a different approach, his voice going pleading. You don't understand how the world works. I built this family's reputation. I made us somebody in Austin. I worked 60-hour weeks at the firm. I pulled out my phone and showed him Mom's financial records. Mom's trust fund paid our property taxes. Her inheritance paid for my college. Her investment dividends paid the country club dues you loved so much. Her family connections got you into that firm. You built nothing, Lawrence. You were a kept man who convinced himself he was a king. That's when Mitchell Barnes knocked on the door. I let him in, confused about why Dad's lawyer was here. Mitchell looked uncomfortable. Lawrence, we need to talk. Dad waved him off. Not now, Mitchell. I'm dealing with this. Mitchell shook his head. It can't wait. It's about Kendall. Dad froze. What about Kendall? Mitchell pulled out papers. She's pregnant. She wants child support. I need you to sign acknowledgement of paternity. The look on Dad's face would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. No. She said she was on the pill. She said we were being careful. Mitchell's expression was grim. Apparently not. She's 12 weeks along. She filed paperwork yesterday. You'll need to arrange a payment plan. Dad sat down heavily on the arm of the couch. I don't have money for child support. I have nothing. She knows I have nothing. Mitchell packed up his briefcase. Then you'll need to get a job. I'm sorry, Lawrence. I'll email you the details. He left, and the silence in the room was deafening. I should have felt satisfaction. Sweet karmic justice. Dad loses everything and gains an unwanted child, the same way Head resented me my whole life. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad that some people never learn, never grow, never become better than their worst instincts. History. Repeating. I said quietly. He looked up at me. What? I met his eyes. You're going to have another child you don't want, just like you never wanted me. That baby will grow up wondering why their father doesn't love them, just like I did. The cycle continues. His face crumpled. He put his head in his hands. For a second, I thought he might actually have a moment of self-awareness. But then he looked up and said, "This is all your fault. If you'd just been reasonable, if you'd shared what Helena left, we could have worked something out. You're selfish, Cassidy. You're vindictive and selfish." And there it was. Even at rock bottom, he couldn't take responsibility. Couldn't see that Head done this to himself. I'm not the one who had an affair, I said calmly. I'm not the one who planned to throw his daughter out while his wife's body was still warm. I'm not the one who insured his dying wife's life for profit. I didn't do this to you, Lawrence. You did this to yourself. He tried one more manipulation. His voice went soft, almost gentle. Cassidy, please. I'm your father. Doesn't that mean anything? Can't we find a way past this? I made mistakes, but am still family. I walked to the door and opened it. You were never my father. A father protects. A father loves. A father shows up. You did none of those things. You were the man who resented me for existing, and spent 32 years making sure I knew it. Now you get to spend the rest of your life being the man who lost everything because he couldn't love anyone but himself. We're done here. Finish packing and leave. The movers took his 8 boxes to the truck. He tried to take his Lexus, but the repo man showed up at 5 p.m. Turns out he'd been leasing it and hadn't made a payment in 2 months. They loaded it onto a flatbed, while Dad watched helplessly. He ended up driving away in the moving truck, headed to God knows where. No forwarding address, no goodbye, he just left. And the house felt lighter the second he was gone. Bonnie brought out champagne that Mom had saved for special occasions. We stood in the kitchen and toasted. To Miss Helena, Bonnie said, raising her glass. The smartest, bravest woman I ever knew. We clinked glasses. To Mom, I echoed, who loved me enough to save me. We drank and cried and laughed all at once. It was over. The war was over. And I'd won. Not because of the money. Because Mom had made sure I knew, without any doubt, that I was loved, that I mattered, that I deserved to be protected. Lawrence Monroe never gave me that. But Helena Monroe did, and that was worth more than $33 million. 6 months later, I stood in what used to be Mom's studio, now transformed into a bright workspace for the Artist-in-Residence program it established. The Helena Monroe Foundation for Women Artists was officially launching that afternoon, and the house was being set up for the reception. 3 women artists, all dealing with major life transitions, had been selected for the first year. They'd live in the converted guest house, have studio space, and receive stipends to create without financial stress. Mom would have loved it. Therapy with Dr. Sylvia Brennan had been crucial. Twice a week for 5 months, it unpacked decades of trauma, learned about narcissistic personality disorder, understood that Dad's inability to love me had nothing to do with my worth and everything to do with his emptiness, processed the grief of losing the parent I had while mourning the parent I deserved but never got. Slowly, painfully, I was healing. I'd kept the house but made it mine, repainted the walls in warm colors Mom had always wanted but Dad had vetoed, turned his office into a library, filled the rooms with light and life and the sound of people who actually cared about each other. Bonnie still worked for me, but now as my friend more than my employee. We cooked together in the evenings, sharing stories about Mom, keeping her memory alive. The money had been handled carefully. I hired Camden Pierce, a financial advisor Georgina recommended, who set up diversified investments. I wasn't touching the principal. The investment income alone was more than enough to live on. I'd gone back to work, but on my terms. I started a nonprofit consulting business, helping small organizations write grants and build capacity. I didn't need the money, but I needed the purpose. Needed to feel useful. Needed to build something of my own. Mom's charities received substantial donations, $1 million to pancreatic cancer research at MD Anderson. A scholarship fund for family caregivers who'd given up their jobs to care for dying relatives. A new hospice wing at the hospital where Mom had been treated, with her name on the door. Every donor wall that had once listed Lawrence Monroe had been updated, his name removed, Mom's name shining in its place. I'd learned what happened to Dad through the grapevine. Head declared bankruptcy within 3 months. Lost his real estate license due to ethics violations. Something about misleading clients. He was working as a property manager for an apartment complex in Round Rock, living in a 1-bedroom unit, his child support garnished directly from his wages before he even saw the check. Kendall had given birth to a baby girl she named Harper. Dad wanted nothing to do with her. Didn't even visit the hospital. History repeating itself, just like I'd predicted. That baby would grow up with a father who resented her existence. It broke my heart. Dad had tried to contact me a few times. An email at month 3. Can we talk? I've had time to think. Maybe we can find a middle ground. I deleted it without responding. A letter at month 5. I'm sorry for how things ended. I'm your father and I love you. Can we please start over? But the apology was hollow. Sorry things ended badly. Not sorry for what Head done. Sorry he got caught. Not sorry for the betrayal. I threw the letter away. He showed up at the foundation's opening event. Actually had the audacity to try to walk in like he was invited. Security, two kind but firm men I'd hired for the evening, stopped him at the door. "This is a private event, sir." Dad pointed at me across the room. "That's my daughter. This used to be my house." One of the security guards spoke into his radio. I walked over, Georgina by my side. "You need to leave," I said calmly. Dad's eyes were desperate. "Cassidy, please." "I just want to talk. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I shook my head. "You had 32 years to talk to me like I mattered. You chose not to. Now I'm choosing not to give you any more of my time. Please leave before this becomes a scene." He opened his mouth to argue, but Georgina stepped forward. "Mr. Monroe, you're trespassing. Leave now or we call the police." He left. I watched him walk to a beat-up Honda Civic that had definitely seen better days and drive away. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just nothing. Aunt Laurel had become an unexpected ally. Shed reached out a month after everything went down and apologized for initially defending Dad. I knew Lawrence was selfish. I didn't know he was cruel. There's a difference. Wed started having lunch once a month. She shared stories about Dad's childhood. How He'd always been entitled. Always needed to be the center of attention. Always blamed others when things went wrong. "Your mother tried to fix him," Laurel told me over coffee one day. "But you can't fix someone who doesn't think they're broken." It helped, understanding that this wasn't new behavior. This was who He'd always been. Bonnie became like a second mother. She taught me Mom's recipes, the ones Shed made special for holidays. Her lemon cake. Her pot roast. Her peach cobbler that Dad had always criticized as too sweet. We'd cook together on Sunday afternoons, and Shed share memories I'd never heard. "Your mama used to talk about you constantly when you weren't home. Cassidy got an A on that paper. Cassidy made me laugh today. Cassidy is the best thing that ever happened to me. She was so proud, honey. So proud. It even started dating." Lincoln Hayes, a museum curator I met at the foundation opening, had asked me to dinner 2 weeks later. He was kind, present, genuinely interested in who I was rather than what I had. On our first date, I told him everything. The whole ugly story, expected him to run. Instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for trusting me with that. Your mother sounds like she was amazing, and your strength is incredible." We were taking it slow, but there was something real there. Something that felt like the beginning of something healthy. I wrote letters to Mom that I never sent. Put them in a box in her studio. "Dear Mom, it's been 6 months. I'm okay. Better than okay. You saved me. Not just with the money, though that security means everything. You saved me by seeing the truth, by acting when you could barely move, by loving me enough to protect me from beyond the grave. I understand now why you stayed with him so long. You were planning, preparing, making sure I'd be safe. I wish you'd left him years ago, but I understand. You did what you could when you could. The house is beautiful. It's mine now, truly mine, but I feel you everywhere. Your studio smells like paint again. Artists are creating here. Your legacy grows every day. Dad lost everything because he valued nothing but money and image. You gave me everything because you valued love and truth. I'm learning the difference. I'm becoming someone you'd be proud of. Someone I'm proud of. Thank you for every sacrifice, every protective instinct, every quiet moment of love. I miss you every day. But I'm not alone. You made sure of that too. The biggest surprise came 3 weeks ago. I was cleaning out the last of Mom's closet when I found a thumb drive hidden in a jewelry box. Labeled for Cassidy, "Watch this alone." I took it to my laptop with shaking hands. It was a video. Mom, sitting in her studio, looking exhausted but determined. Georgina must have helped her record it. "Sweet Cassidy," she said, her voice weak but clear. "If you're watching this, you've discovered everything. I'm sorry I didn't act sooner. I'm sorry you had to grow up in that toxicity. But look at you. You're strong. You're kind. You survived him and stayed soft. That's the real victory. The money isn't the point. The point is freedom. Freedom to be yourself without his voice telling you you're not enough. You were always enough. Always. Use this security to live boldly, love deeply, create beauty, help others. That's what I wanted to do with my life. You get to do it for both of us now. And darling, don't let bitterness make you hard. Your father is a broken man who breaks others. You're a whole woman who heals. Stay whole. I love you more than every star in the Texas sky. I always have. I always will. I watched that video 7 times. Cried through every viewing. Then I saved it to 3 different drives because I never wanted to risk losing it. Mom's face, Mom's voice, Mom's love, all preserved forever. Standing in the studio the day of the foundation launch, watching artists set up their work, watching people who'd loved Mom mingle and celebrate her memory, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The $33 million had changed my circumstances. I could travel now. Create. Give back. Build something meaningful. But the real gift wasn't the money. It was the proof that I'd been loved. That someone had seen me, truly seen me, and decided I was worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth planning for, worth saving. Dad had waited for Mom's last breath to throw me out. Mom had waited for that same moment to lift me up. She'd spent her final months making sure that when the dust settled, I'd be standing strong. Not broken, not bitter, not destroyed by his cruelty, just free. Finally. Wonderfully. Completely free. The guests started arriving for the reception. I stood at the door welcoming people, accepting condolences and congratulations in equal measure. Georgina arrived with champagne. Helena would be so proud, she said, squeezing my hand. You're honoring her perfectly. I looked around the house. At the art on the walls. At the people laughing and talking. At the life growing in spaces that had once felt so cold. I hope so, I said. I really hope so. That evening, after everyone left, I sat in Mom's chair in the studio and looked out at the hill country sunset. Orange and purple, just like in her unfinished painting. I raised a glass of wine to the empty room. Thank you, Mom, I whispered. For everything. For seeing me. For saving me. For loving me enough to make sure it'd be okay. I promise I'll live the life you wanted for me. I'll be brave. I'll be kind. I'll create beauty. I'll help people. I'll stay soft even though the world was hard. I'll be the woman you raised me to be. I love you. Forever and always. And I swear, in that moment, I felt her. Felt her approval. Felt her love. Felt her smiling. The war was over. The healing had begun. And I was finally free. So, that's my story. The story of how my father waited for my mother's last breath to throw me out, and how my mother's $33 million surprise changed everything. But honestly, the money wasn't the surprise. The surprise was discovering that I'd been loved all along, that I'd always been enough, that I'd always been worth fighting for. Some people spend their whole lives trying to win the approval of someone who will never give it. I wasted 32 years on that. But thanks to Mom, I won't waste another second. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. I'm curious, have you ever dealt with a toxic family member who tried to control or undervalue you? How did you break free? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how others have survived and thrived after family betrayal. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in dealing with difficult family dynamics. Your support means everything and helps get these real stories out to people who need them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you were always enough. The people who couldn't see that was their limitation, not yours. Stay strong, stay soft, and keep building the life you deserve. I'll see you in the next one.